So hi everyone, my name is Jacob. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to run through another exciting project that's going to be launching in the west side. If you haven't heard about it yet, it's going to be Lucerne Grand. So this project is interesting because it's one of the first launches in a while that is first of all harmonized in the west side area. Second of all is right beside the MRT station, roughly about 300-400 meters away or even lesser. And it is going to be a mixed development with a bit of commercials at the bottom. Importantly itself, it is one of the youngest product that's going to appear in the Lakeside area, and it even has pretty decent views of the entire Lakeside garden. So I'm going to run through this project by itself through my FAB concept. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'm going to link it somewhere above so they can go and click into it to watch the entire FAB concept to determine how can this project fare in the future market. So if let's say you are a buyer that's looking to buy for investment or for own stay, it's definitely going to be a project that you might want to take a look. But we will also have to see whether it's a project that can potentially make money or maybe there's a chance that it may not. So let's find out whether it will or not, okay? So today at Lucerne Grand, we're going to understand whether it's a FAB approved or a flawed project. Okay, so for some basic information by itself, it is a CDL project. CDL itself is very reputable. They build very, very nice projects. Or most of their landscaping is always very pretty. So as a product itself, you can anticipate it to be one of a kind itself in the Lakeside area. And also for CDL, you can always anticipate it to be a very quality project. Okay, 570 units, 2 to 4 bedrooms only. Only GFA harmonized one in the vicinity. And on top of that, it has some commercial at the bottom and it's really right next to Lakeside MRT station. Okay, so if you haven't seen me or heard of me before, my name is Jacob Ong. You can watch any of the videos that I'm putting out there, and I'm also going to put out more videos along the way. But if you want, do scan the QR code here to reach out to me. We can always discuss about our property plans. Or if you are going to buy a resale project anywhere or even a HDB, you can always reach out to me to discuss whether you feel that it's a product that could potentially hold value, or maybe it may not hold value. We can also find out and discuss. Okay, no obligation, right? Scan if you want to chit chat with me lah. And so coming into it, our FAB framework, this is going to be the determining factor to whether Lucerne Grand itself is a can buy or won't buy, right? Or highly consider or what, you know. But my FAB concept consists of future buyer affordability, available supply and demand of the area, as well as the buyer's behavior in the entire vicinity. Okay. So we're going to jump straight into it. First, we start with future buyer affordability. So I want to throw out a question. If let's say you are a potential buyer, the first thing that comes to mind if you think about Jurong West or even the west side in general, is this area a high income area, or is it potentially a more medium income area, or even a low income area due to the age of the property? Because that will eventually affect the future buyer affordability, correct? So I'm going to run through a little bit of depth, okay, in today's analysis of Lucerne Grand. Okay, I put blue cross here. So in this blue cross itself, that's where Lucerne Grand is going to be at, okay? So we can see that it is kind of split down the middle, okay? What I mean by that? Okay, if you draw this line across, right, then here you have Jurong East, right? Then here you have Jurong West. Up here you have our Tengah, right? And then down here you have our Bukit Batok, which consists of Hillview and all that. Okay, so this itself will think that it actually is a pretty large area. So generally speaking, I want to always bring attention to certain figures. Combined total population, you're probably looking at 253,000 plus 72,000 plus 22,000 plus 165,000. Total amount of residents in this entire 4 clusters, you are combining up to 515,000 residences. So if you've seen my previous video on Lentor Garden, right, you'll notice that Lentor Garden itself in the vicinity got 1.2 million residences. So you see that immediately we are about only 45% of the entire Lentor area, right? What does this mean? This naturally means that your entire demand is going to be cut by more than half. On top of that, we also need to understand the demographics of this area. Is Lentor area a younger demographic pool, or Punggol area a younger demographic pool compared to a Bukit Batok or compared to a Tengah, right? We have to see it as a holistic point of view. In Bukit Batok, in Jurong East, in Jurong West, you probably have a bit more older population, right? And Tengah itself, you have a lot of younger BTOs as well. So if you look at our population itself, 22,000, more than likely is our Tengah side. So just to give you a quick overview on our Jurong West and East, I'll break it down into 2 portions. Portion A, Jurong West, Jurong East. Portion B, Bukit Batok, as well as Tengah. Let's take a quick look at my numbers here. Okay, again, total population, if we combine Jurong East, Jurong West, we have 326,000. Okay, so that means that's already more than 60% of the total population of the entire 4 clusters that I added together. Okay, Jurong West itself holds a very large 253,000, whereas Jurong East much smaller at 72,000. Okay, if you look at Jurong West, the population age between 25 to 59, I always use this 25 to 59 because I want to use what I call the AIR. These are active income range, which means buyers who are more than likely to upgrade will usually fall within 25 to 59, right size from their lender to condo, or even anything more than that, they tend not to try unless they really need to. Anything younger than that, unless the parents support, usually the buyers will not really buy. Okay, so if you look at my numbers here, then you'll understand that actually this is very different compared to the other projects that I've done in terms of research. Because if you see my active income range residences, 194,000 is not a lot. And if we look at that, okay, those that stay in 4-room HDB or larger, there's only 71,000. So why I break down these numbers is because we need to understand that if I have large quantity of people that are staying in 3 rooms or smaller, it very likely means that it is a slightly lower income or slightly older profile in the area. And that usually also equates to affordability being a problem, especially if you own a condominium there, right? Which means that you can buy it, but when you want to sell, would it be challenging? Right, so this is a very honest number. Unfortunately, sensitive to say, but it has to be spoken this way because we have to understand this is how the market moves. Right, like I always give the example, in Toa Payoh, yes, you have $1 million HDBs, but 80% of the Toa Payoh population are older. On top of that, majority of them stay in older HDBs as well. For them to move in from a 500K HDB into a $3 million property, the likelihood is very, very low. Right. So this is going to be a challenge, right? Because we have to understand this kind of demographics to determine whether Lucerne Grand or even the other lakeside properties in general can be bought or not, right? So if you take a look at the numbers wise, okay, total housing need in Jurong West, okay, 47.2%, okay, stays in a 4-room, a 5-room condominium or landed property. If you look at Jurong East, it's only 35%, which means that it's very likely that the demand pool there is maybe a little bit weaker, okay, especially from the older crowd. But from the younger crowd, you probably have a pretty decent size because you see, in terms of my 4-room, I still got 25% and 20%, which is still a pretty healthy amount. Only thing is that in the grand scheme of things, the pool of buyers is much lesser. You see, out of 71,000 people, okay, that stay in 4-room or bigger, I have to divide it, which is only 36% out of my 194,000. But now I want to talk about Tengah and Bukit Batok. So Tengah itself, widely known for it to be a young estate, and as of 2025, the data here not enough because why? The population itself has probably not been updated yet. But if you take a look at my numbers here, okay, total population 188,000. Okay, if you zoom in a little bit to see, Tengah itself has 22,000, Bukit Batok 165,000. Naturally, new township, you will have a lot of young people. Okay, population age between 25 to 59, 22,800 versus 97,000. So interesting, maybe about 60%, right? But if you look at Tengah itself, my total population 22,960. My total population of people 25 to 59 is 22,800. This is close to 99% population of people that are active income range one, right? So this means what? This means naturally, will you anticipate, in all fairness, for the Tengah side to be where most of your upgraders come from? Okay, for Tengah itself, 10% stay in 4-room, 18% stay in 5-room, condominium we got 31%. Out of all of them here, total population that is staying in 4-room, 5-room, 13,000, which means that we have roughly about 9,000 people, okay, based on this number here, staying in 3-room or smaller. Right, so we can anticipate that those will not exactly be our upgraders. So what we can see now is that based on my population, about 60% of buyers out of my 22,000 here potentially may still want to upgrade. That's a good thing. If we look at Bukit Batok, you see the numbers are a bit drastic as well. If you see, I have my Bukit Batok side, active income range, you're looking at 64,000. Out of 64,000, 21% stay in 4-room, 5-room 16%, condominiums 12%, landed 1.9%. But if you are familiar with Bukit Batok, you'll know that majority of the housing there's a little bit older. A few young ones that are like the Sky Peak, there's very, very high-rise ones in Bukit Batok. Or closer to Get Hong side, you have a few. But generally speaking, even condominiums there are also much older, right? Especially in the Hillview area. So if you look at this, I show you Jurong East, Jurong West, then I show you Tengah, I show you Bukit Batok, then you think to yourself, actually, who are you really banking on in terms of the potential buyer? It will very likely be coming from the Tengah side. So I'm going to run through in a bit more detail. We need to understand one other thing, apart from the population and demographics there, we need to understand their affordability. Today, current buyers can afford, does it mean that future buyers can afford or not? So if today is considered cheap for current buyers, in the future, is it still considered cheap? Right. So if we look at first quarter HDB prices, okay, Tengah, unfortunately, there's no sale data, right? So we can totally ignore Tengah for now, okay? But if we look at Jurong East, Jurong West, and Bukit Batok, firstly, you will see, actually, Bukit Batok 4-room median prices are the highest. And then you look at Jurong East and Jurong West, the pricing is 548 and 535. So the bigger unit types at Jurong West, 635, bigger unit types at Jurong East, 715. Right, but I want to bear in mind, right, Jurong East, Jurong West, there are a lot of older unit types that are also big. So Tengah itself and Bukit Batok itself will be actually the few areas that you'll probably have decent population, as well as young population that owns a young HDB or young product type. So why am I showing you this? It's because if you look at resale prices in these areas, you can then determine whether it's a strong likelihood that they'll upgrade or not. So if I change and I tell you that actually the 4-room in Bukit Batok only cost 500k, you also be concerned because I have 3 estates that is considered cheap. You must also bear in mind that actually, right, based on everything that I have written here, right, okay, you will probably anticipate that Jurong East and Jurong West to be slightly older and Bukit Batok to be slightly younger. That's why the average of pricing is actually higher, right? But it's a really, really, really big mix. And I cannot really for sure say that Bukit Batok is definitely more expensive. It's just that maybe at present, Bukit Batok has slightly bigger range of young properties. And that's why their average price is a little bit higher, because they can demand that. And on top of that, they can also demand it because their population is also pretty decent sized. Right. So few things we are looking at, but generally speaking, I'll show you HDB resale prices because I want us to understand the prices there will eventually also affect our condo upgraders as well as buyers' affordability. So now I show you another challenge which actually come out quite recently. In 2nd of July, second consecutive quarter of falling home prices. Again, this is today's problem, because if today home prices fall, what is the likelihood and the ability of the buyers to then want to upgrade a little bit lower? Correct. So 2 quarters of declining prices. Let's take a look at that. Okay. Q1, Q2, Q3, generally speaking, prices went on an upward trend in 2025. Q4 reaching more of a stagnation already. And I'm not even saying it's like 5-6% growth. It's just very, very minute. I think it's 0.something% growth. But generally speaking, what does that mean for us? It means that the HDB market itself is already slowing down. So HDB market can only pick back up in 2 ways. One is you introduce a lot of population. Right. So with an increase in population, then you'll realize that more people willing to buy my HDB, it is easier for my HDB prices to go up. But what is the government doing? Actually, they are doing something a little bit different, which I think everybody knows already, right? They're actually introducing more supply into the HDB market. So I was actually talking to a few of my sellers recently, discussing why their house got no viewing. So a HDB itself today that is worth 800k, for example, you can spend 800k to buy a HDB, and today resale process probably will still take you maybe 3 to 4 months. Then there's a seller wants extension, maybe another 3 months, so it probably takes 7 months. Your renovation, then you move in, maybe 8-9 months. All right, so a typical sale process for HDB now is about 8 to 9 months. That means if you are a buyer, you go in, you wait, you see something you like, then plus 8 to 9 months. BTOs also are giving you a very similar timeline, which means what? They're actually entering now at about 1 year. It means you only need to wait 1 year. So if let's say I ballot for BTO, I'm successful, and the government has introduced short wait time BTO, introduced so much supply of BTOs that whatever I buy, I also need to wait about 1 year. But this time I buy a fresh lease, I buy a brand new house, I can renovate what I want to do. I don't have to care about the old renovation of a second-hand home. Right. So if you look at consumer behavior, it means that buyers nowadays are willing to wait the extra few months for their BTO, because on top of being able to save in terms of renovation, they are also going to save in terms of the cost, because instead of it costing 800,000, it will probably only cost 500,000 or 400,000 in today's market. So buyers today are spoiled for choice, and this would mean that HDB resale market is slowing down, and it has proven that the last 2 quarters prices dip. But if that happens, does that mean that condo prices are coming down? So if we take a look, we just need to understand, even if HDB prices come down, why are condo prices still going up? And if they are going up and you are holding on to your HDB today, my recommendation is try to sell a bit faster. Unfortunately, you may not be able to set record prices anymore because that's not what the market is demanding. But if you can still sell around what prices was set at in 2025, honestly speaking, as a first-time homeowner, you never really lose much. But if you don't sell and then you say, then I'll wait a few years, or maybe I'll wait until my price move up, honestly, in the next 2 to 3 years, I will foresee the HDB prices to be a bit slow. So I'd rather you sell today, you lose that 10, 20k compared to what your neighbor sold at, but then you enter into a private property today. That helps you to immediately increase your asset size. On top of that, if the private property prices continue to climb, generally speaking, you also will safeguard yourself a little bit more. Okay? So, people always talk about one thing, which is a bubble. Honestly speaking, a bubble is always caused by a lot of supply, no buyer. Correct? However, if you got a lot of supply and you got a lot of buyer, you have no problem, right? Importantly, we just need to understand, can the future buyers afford it? If they can afford it, from now or all the way to 2030 or 2035, they can still afford it. You shouldn't be too scared in terms of the pricing. Okay, but never mind. All right, let's continue. As I mentioned just now, actually, when we are always talking about future buyer affordability, I want to make sure that you understand that today, right, current buyer affordability in the Jurong area is very, very weak. So it is weak simply because people right now, we find that the price gap be a little bit high if you want to enter the Jurong, and for the same price to enter Jurong, you can buy a lot of other places. But why do people still buy Jurong? Naturally, it's because they maybe work in Jurong Island, or they're banking on the future CBD, or maybe they're working in the future CBD, or they're working in the future transformation area, which is where we as consumers must also see. If you follow through my FAB concept, I always ask one thing, which is actually what do buyers want in 2035? And whatever you're buying today, can you meet the need of 2035? Because that is actually what you're fighting for. If you want to make money in anything that you buy, you need to be able to buy something today that in 2030 or 2035 down the line when you're ready to sell, there is a demand for it. So that's the whole reason why we talk about future buyer affordability and not current. If we talk about current buyer affordability, anything else cannot buy because everything is expensive. Correct? So how does this actually play out for us if I focus back on future buyer affordability? Generally speaking, Jurong itself has a huge transformation, 200,000 new jobs, the MRT line, 42,000 new homes in Tengah by 2030. All this is what I mentioned just now, introduction of demand. Because more population, more demand. Right? And generally, they're going to invest 100 billion into the area. When the government says that they'll do it. Right? So naturally speaking, I'm not too afraid. I'm just wondering whether in 2030 or 2035, if you are an investor and you want to exit, can or not. Right. So Tengah New Township is always a big plus, so don't worry. Right. Actually, they're just making the whole west side area into a very different side of Singapore. You will not see the same in Sengkang, you know what I mean? Because Sengkang is very mature, a lot of housing, very heartland. But you'll probably see Jurong to be a very, very different area. But all this takes time. So again, if you can enter in 2026, whatever you buy, by the time you exit in 2035 or even 2030, and you start to see the transformation, that's usually when you make some money. All this may not jog your interest to say that, hey, this one I definitely must buy. So usually we have to understand that when the population come in, we also need to introduce jobs there. When there are jobs there, then people will want to stay there. You must also know who the government is trying to attract. We are not even trying to attract companies, we're trying to attract industries. So what we're looking at is advanced manufacturing, biomedical, maritime, right? So they are trying to create regional headquarters in this area so that you can attract more MNCs. More MNCs naturally equal to more expatriates. Then you'll see that equals to more need for international schools. That usually increases rental. So ACSI is there in Tengah now. United World College is moving to Tengah. German International School is creating another outlet in Tengah as well. So why are they moving all the big international schools there? It's because why? When you introduce regional headquarters, you will introduce expatriates. When you introduce expatriates, rental will go up, value will go up. Generally speaking, whatever you own there is an asset. Right. So again, not going to dive too deep, but this is just my 2 cents on this. Right. So I mentioned under FAB framework, we always need to eventually look at demographics and its impact in the area. So when we look at it as an entire market, we just need to understand that you have dual income, no kids, you have dual income with families, we have elderly. Now, based on population, probably we're leaning more towards this direction. Right. But Tengah will probably lean more towards this direction. See how you want to leverage. Okay. So I always run through this in all my videos. So I will be quick on this. On the assumption that in today's market, buyers are 30 to 35 years old, earning 7,000 to 8,000. If you yourself are in this age group and already earning more, you will more than likely want to upgrade a few years later. Okay, but generally speaking, if we look at it, income range will always go upwards, and this is based on 2024 data from SingStats. Okay, so just on the assumption that this person still earns the same, dual income, no kids person earning the same 7,000, 8,000 at 30, 35. Right, they will be able to loan a maximum of 1.78 million by up to 2.38 million. Right, but is that really what we're looking at? Not really. We're trying to look at the affordability. So, based on the respective income, okay, they will have CPF OA outlay of 1,840 and 1,752, totaling up to be 3,500. Okay, based on a $1.785 million loan, their monthly installment is 5,009, which means that they have to pay cash of 2,004. This would equate to about 15% of their total income. I think people find that more than comfortable, especially for dual income, no kids. And I always be very realistic here. If you are dual income with kids, you will not stretch your money. You probably want to be a bit more prudent, especially if you are a safer person, right? You'll probably say, never mind, I'll in for 2 million instead, right? Down payment required is 500,000. Just now, forgot to mention, if you are looking at 2.38 million, your down payment required is 595,000. So the difference is about 100k, 100k to buy 300,000. Okay, so based on the estimated HDB selling price of the area, I use Bukit Batok for example, 650,000, and for 5 rooms, 750,000. Right? What we can be looking at is that by the time they go through all the costs, etc., the only cash top up required to buy a $2 million property will be 48,000 if you were a dual income with kids, and 14,000 if you were dual income with kids owning a 5-room. One thing I did not include here is buyer stamp duty. If you stay in a HDB long enough, you also will build up your own OA or build up your own cash asset. So to me, cost of buying will always be there. That means my BSD or that. But if you look at true cost of just upgrading, it's very simple, I feel. Okay, so based on a $2 million budget, if you were a young upgrader with kids, you will then drop your monthly installment down to $5,000, whereas previously it was close to $5,900. CPF payout stays the same at $3,565. Cash difference become $1,004 to own a condo for $2 million. I think people will find that very, very palatable. That's of course when people want to stretch or don't stretch, it's really up to them. But from what I'm seeing, in today's market, buyers usually are more than able to afford. That's why you will see that the private market demand is still pretty solid. Right? When there's more introduction of people, when there's more introduction of jobs in the area, etc., people income will probably go up. Regional officers usually means their income will be higher, and then they're also quite young there, like in Tengah area. You can anticipate the income to be higher, pay to be higher, and you will realize that this 1,004, people will be more than willing to pay because it's only a small portion of their income. So people will probably, from what I understand, pay or be willing to pay up to 30 to 40%, okay, of their income into a house. 40% is the people who are a bit more risky. 30% is what I see as the market average. All right. So based on my future buyer affordability, you just need to understand, summarize it based on future. Which means that if I look at Jurong today, you ask me if you can buy or not, I also feel very scared because seems like the people there are not willing to budge due to the demographic and the income. And buying as an investment property, I look into the future, 2030, 2035, is there possibility for buyers to buy? I feel it's possible, but you must know what to buy. 2 bedrooms, okay, right? Usually for low income, no kids. 3 bedroom, ideal. Right, 4 bedroom. You realize that a lot of older folks, when they right size from a landed property, they usually try to buy a 4 bedroom or 3 bedroom. So it's just keeping your options open. Okay? But anyway, this is my QR code. If you want to have more discussion, feel free to scan. Okay? As I move on into my available supply and demand. This part, actually, I did quite a lot of research. I always find that it's quite interesting. So, again, based on my framework, we usually look at 2 aspects: private property, HDB property. If I look at HDB supply for this area, okay, I've already summarized it. HDB supply, we don't need to look at what's available. We look at what's to come. So, let's understand one thing here. Bukit Batok, Jurong West, Jurong East, Tengah. Total BTO units across the 4 townships, 27,000 as of 2026 down to 2034. This data, let me remind you, it may not include some of the upcoming launches in the next few months in the Tengah area, etc. Right? And also it means that there could be more supply here since government mentioned they want to do 100,000. Okay? But based on what's available now, right? You see Bukit Batok 4,000 new, Jurong West 6,000 new, Jurong East 1,000 new, and Tengah 15,000. My 2 biggest players actually is Jurong West and Tengah, which if you look at the map is above and below. So they're kind of wrapping around us. So this also eventually lead to what? My buyer's behavior. Because buyer's behavior will always mean that they want to buy similar location, closer to MRT station. All right. And if you look at far right here, 2026, 1,140 BTOs that will basically MOP. 2027, 1,006. 2028, zero. My forecaster got 0. So question here is, you own any property you want to sell in the west side in 2028, do you think you have a buyer pool? Probably very little. So you want to sell, you either sell early or you sell late. That means you either sell 2026, 2027, but in 2028, I tell you, you will see the private market be very, very slow. Okay? But then in 2029, you'll probably pick up because why? My demand pool jumped to 3,008. From 0 become 3,008. 2030, 3,003. 2031, 3,009. 2032, 8,006. So when is the best time to sell? To me, of course, naturally speaking, we look at numbers. 2030 to 2034, best time to sell. That means any time there you sell is okay. So let's say Lucerne Grand TOP in 2031. Okay, then you wait 1 year. Right? Because 2032 you sell, you probably have a strongest demand. Right. So I look at these kind of factors because these kind of factors are very important to me. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to sell something when nobody's looking. That's why it's hard to sell. Right. So you want to sell something when everybody's looking. So if you look at my entire chart here, best time to sell actually is when it's going to be 2030 to 2034. Because if you just see, I got a total number of 27,000 units. But in itself here, 18K out of 27,000 will come in 2030 onwards. So if you own anything and then your condo MOP or your condo TOP by 2030, 2031, actually it's okay to sell. But if you want to sell today, you must anticipate it to be very slow, which actually is also quite telling of how the private market is moving. It is a bit slow. Okay, then 2027 also will be slow. 2028 will be extremely slow, I tell you first. So next 2 years, you as the homeowner must also be very, very cautious. You either sell early and buy into another product today because you can let your seller stamp duty ride out this entire period so that by the time you want to sell, you will arrive in 2030, 2034. This is a good time to time the market, especially if you own a property now, okay? So now let me move on. So now we move over to private property. So you look at supply and demand, you realize that in 2030 to 2035, we got a lot of HDB coming to the market. But what I always say is what? By 2030 to 2035, how many properties is 15 years or younger? And the age of the properties in the vicinity are they 10 years or younger? Number of units per project. So I already did this in advance, okay? Basically, if I filter out these 4 areas, condos, units 200 and above, TOP date 2010 and younger, which means today is already 16 years old. But what I will say is that based on my 2010 or younger, that means 16 years or younger already, okay, 16 years or younger already, you are already looking at only 15 resale projects. Subsequently, you will then have Lucerne Grand, you will then have Tengah Garden Residences, you will then have Lakeside, Lake Garden. If I'm looking at my entire population, my future buyer needs, my introduction of population into Tengah, and then I look at the entire grand scheme of things, in my 4 clusters here, I only got 15 resale projects. You need to ask yourself, if you are a buyer, coming from a buyer behavior mindset, okay, you want to buy a property, you will only look for younger properties. And if you look for younger properties, today I got 15, maybe all the other projects TOP, maybe I plus another 5 down the line. Are you going to shop for the old ones or the young ones? If you have the affordability, it means your income is decent, or that you will definitely go for the young ones. If, of course, you value space, you value quantum price, you probably go for the old ones. Right? So naturally speaking, I don't have a lot of options. So if you look at supply and demand of my private property, it's actually pretty low. Right, my supply is pretty low, but the demand, you can anticipate the young buyers, especially coming from Tengah and Jurong West, with so many BTOs there, they may eventually want to buy into a young condo. Right, then they always come to it, which is what is the impact that will have on the buyer's behavior. In the future, my buyers say that I probably want to buy for a young condo. We also need to take a look at that. You look for alternatives, you either for younger or whatever, right? So what are the alternatives I show you are? Based on my 15 projects, I'll find the closest 7. And then we take a look at its highest average PSF. Also, we take a look at the project by itself. Okay. In terms of age, Lakefront Residences, 2014, TOP, 2017, 2019, 2016, then Lake Garden, Sora, Jayden, all TOP around the same time in 2028. But remember, that's why I show you the HDB graph. 2028, nothing MOP. Which means that these 4 projects, if they want to sell in 2028, they will definitely see that it's very challenging to sell. So, as an investor, it means what? It means if you buy into here, you want to sell in 2028, will it be challenging? It will be. But if you are own stay, you buy into here, it means these 3 projects here, you won't really care. All right. Then maybe you only want to sell in 2035, 2032. And by then, your demand is going to be pretty solid. I think maybe you go for Lucerne Grand better because you can actually write out the entire period when there's no demand in the market. Okay, so if you look at PSF itself, okay, it's not exactly cheap. J Gateway itself is already 2003, right? In terms of max PSF, average being 1009. But honestly speaking, if you as a seller owning these few properties here, next time when you want to sell, you see max PSF 2003, you'll try your best to match, right? Because sellers' behavior is all like that. They say, oh, neighbor sell 2003, I should try 2350. If I can sell 2,350, it makes sense for me that I sell, right? But that's depending on the demand. So coming down to it, actually very clear cut. Why I always talk about all these kind of consumer behaviors, because consumer behavior is the number 1 reason why the property market moves. If you want to say that, oh, it's because agent pushed the unit, or it's because government policy is not strong, etc. Actually, you think about it. If I ask you to sell a house, your first thought to the agent is, I want to sell as high as possible, correct? So if you want to sell as high as possible, the agent achieve it, right? Then you are going to be in this pool. So if you are in this pool, next time when you want to buy a time, whatever you want to buy into, the seller is also going to ask for the highest price. So generally speaking, it means what? It means that you have to be very certain. Whatever you are buying, okay, do you think the future buyers can afford? So in terms of impact-wise, of course, if you are Lucerne Grand and you can enter at 2.4K or below, that means you are hovering around the J Gateway, Lake Grande, etc., etc. And these properties themselves are already far older than 15 years old. So if you can enter anywhere within the max PSF of 2004 and below, I honestly think Lucerne Grand will be a great buy. But Jayden, Sora, Lake Garden Residences, they're pushing 2005, 2008. Of course, they will be your price ceiling, right? Because they are going to be the one that if today they enter at 2008, they must sell at 3000, right? So if you enter at 2004, you sell at 2000 and maybe 6, maybe 7, right? Then you can actually gain some profit. So I always bring out this map, okay? Even when I talk to my other buyers. Just now we look at this again, Jayden, Sora, Lake Garden, 2008, 2005 PSF. Transacted, that's the max, correct? So you look at buyer behavior, we understand this. Lucerne Grand next to MRT station, Lake Garden, Sora, pretty far. Lake Garden and Sora, if I remember correctly, is about 800 meters to MRT station. Jayden right next to Jurong East MRT station, of course this is the most prime, right? So if this is the most prime, 2008 PSF, you need to ask yourself, next time they want to sell, they must sell at 3000 PSF, correct? Or even higher. Sora and Lake Garden, they achieve max of 2005. If you here can buy at 2004, right next to MRT station, right on top of commercial, don't you think that it's a possible okay? Right? I mean, I honestly feel like that, right? Because to me, it's a psychology of purchasing. If this is 2004 PSF and this is 2005 PSF today, then naturally buying close to MRT station at 2004 PSF makes perfect sense. If next time they want to sell at 2008 PSF and you sell at 2008 PSF, the consumer behavior thought process will be exactly the same unless the people here wants the view, correct? If you sell at 2007 PSF, you also should sell, because it makes a lot of sense, correct? So this is where it really is important for us to understand, because assuming our 3-bedroom is 1,000 square feet, okay, and 2004 PSF, it means that my 3-bedroom is going to be 2.4 million, correct? Next time you sell at 2007 PSF, it means you earn 300,000. I think that is pretty okay. Yeah. So if I then look at buyer behavior, again, based on my Jayden sold 88% the first day, Jurong got pent-up demand, right? Highest price point, 3.92 million. If you look at my address indicator, 61% of the buyers here are actually currently staying in the private property, okay? Whereas a smaller 38% are HDB upgraders. If you go down the line a little bit, you see Lake Garden Residences, the numbers are also 52% private, okay, 47% HDB upgraders. Actually, why is it like that? Right, it's because the Jurong East, Jurong West area, I think the buyers who want to buy for own stay are a lot more than the investors. Usually, if you realize that private hold a significant pool of ownership, I find that it's usually because there are more investors, okay? But if you see that there's more HDB profile or a creep up in HDB profile, I always think that's a very good indicator. Right, and then now you look at Sora. Sora is also a very good indicator because why 55% of the buyers come from HDB upgraders, okay, whereas 44% come from private properties, which you will start to see that there are buyers or profiles that are in the HDB property today, they're actually moving into condominium. So next time you also start to see that Tengah, you have buyers that come from there, or Yunqing area, you have buyers that come from there, okay. But if you look at Sora, highest price point also 3.9 million. Right. So actually what am I trying to bring across? I'm trying to bring across the HDB and the private ratio. So if you look at the buyer's behavior once again, Caspian, then Lucerne Grand. It is the closest MRT station, and on top of it, we have some commercial units. Generally speaking, if you were in the resale market, you will see Caspian also, and you also see Lucerne Grand. You as a consumer will definitely do this. So that's when you enter, and then you will start counting other things. Lease, amenities, the distance to MRT station, am I willing to pay 200,000? Right. Then if next door property is very similar price point in terms of price differentiation, then you will say that, since it's such a close price point, I don't mind buying Lucerne Grand. This is always the common top. If you are a Westie, you will know that our MRT line is above ground, which means that you will have some units that is facing the Lakeside MRT station. So let's figure out whether MRT noise will really affect a condo's overall profit. Because if you are an investor, you also will ask yourself, should I buy the unit that's facing the MRT station, even if it's 30K cheaper, or should I buy the non-facing MRT station in hopes that I will earn more in the future? So let's take a look. So this is our Caspian example. Caspian is literally next door to Lucerne Grand. There's a 2-bedroom, 1,001 square feet, 614 PSF. 2-bedroom here, 936 square feet, 641 PSF. Just take into consideration the fact that Caspian is a bit older, and also that Caspian is non-harmonized. So if you do harmonization, the size will drop, so the PSF should go up. But in terms of PSF difference, you're looking at only about 4%. 614 versus 641. Caspian current prices. 2-bedroom, 1518 PSF. $1.52 million. Then you look at the non-MRT facing one. 1602 PSF. $1.5 million. $20,000 difference. Okay, this is important because as $20,000 go, when they bought it at the time, they paid very similar price. 600K versus 600K. Just that PSF different 4%. Eventually, when they sell here, 5.5% difference in terms of pricing. But as though there's no difference at all, or a minute 1% difference. Because I personally feel that if I'm going to look at it like that, then to me, I'll just buy whatever unit it comes. In fact, I'll go for the lowest quantum because lowest quantum means that my outlay is the lowest. But if you are an own stay owner, then you will probably want to stay here because you want the peace and quiet. Eventually, your selling price also very similar. Honestly, not much difference. Right. So if you look at it, buyer's behavior, MRT facing 614 PSF to 641 PSF for non-MRT facing, price difference of 4.4%. Current resale price 1518, 1602, 5.5% difference. And if you look at the profitability, this person earned $904 per square foot, whereas this person earned $961 per square foot at 6.3%. I feel that as buyer behaviors go, it has very little impact. In fact, if you are an investor or if I'm an investor, I would have preferred to go for the MRT facing unit simply because my outlay is lower. I mean, that's how I think of it. Okay, if I give you another example, Lakefront Residences, that is also very close to the MRT facing of Lakeside. Right, launch period again, 2-bedroom here, 825,000, PSF 1,144 versus a MRT facing, in fact, much cheaper at $1,071 per square foot, 807,000. Quantum wise, you're looking at no more than 20,000, 18,000 only. Okay, 6.8% price difference. If you look at the resale market, 37 here, MRT facing and 18 non-MRT facing. Eventually, you see that the stack 18 over here sold 1.31 million at 1.816 PSF, whereas the MRT facing unit itself, number 37, sold at 1.26 million at 1672 PSF. 8.6% price difference. If we summarize it again, price difference when you buy 6.8%, price difference when you sell 8.6%. Again, to me, is not much of a difference. Okay, profitability will change a little bit. One person earn 11% more than another person. Again, as an investor, really up to you to choose. But for me as an own stayer, I find that I'll probably go for the one that is facing quieter because I personally like quiet. So, if I was to summarize this entire video, just to understand how Lucerne Grand is going to work. Generally speaking, future buyer affordability here, we have to see it in two ways. One, my future buyers are older or younger. Yes, we have a decently young pool coming from Tengah, coming from maybe the Jurong West side, but as most and bulk of my population is actually older, will I feel that the future buyer affordability is going to be strong? I'm a bit hesitant as of today. But as Jurong slowly progresses and slowly does an entire transformation, you also have to be very clear that you are kind of betting, if you're an investor in this area, to know that in time to come, when you are ready to sell at the time, you can sell to a large pool. But take note of my numbers. 2026 to 2028 will be a slow time for selling a private property, especially if you're on the west side. Okay, or even HDB also can be considered slow. Because why? Generally speaking, you'll find that you have very little demand from BTO or HDB upgraders. You have low demand. So this is definitely a risky period for me because if you look at the data from just now, the HDB side, you'll see that not a lot of people MOP, which is a pretty big risk for you. 2030 onwards to 2035, good time to sell simply because the demand immediately come in. 18,000 out of 27,000 is a huge number. So as a future buyer affordability, I also hope that with all the MNCs and transformations coming, the income generally ticks upwards. And if that happens, your future buyer affordability will be relatively secure. But we just have to also be very fair, okay? So I'm not saying that everything can buy, I'm just saying that let's also be fair. Today, this portion will feel a bit weak. In the future, maybe a bit better. So you must understand that it is a bet. End of the day, you are betting. But when you have such strong transformation, etc., that's coming in, maybe this bet is worthwhile, but the holding period must be long enough. Available supply and demand, just remember, by private properties that is of a certain age, only got 15 products in the market. So any young property in the market will definitely hold its value, especially if you can enter at 2,400 PSF and below, but they say that's the average lah. So honestly speaking, you plus minus a bit, I also think it's okay lah for Lucerne Grand. Why? Because if this is the PSF that you're entering below Lake Garden, entering below Sora, entering below Jayden, but you are not too far off from the other young properties in the vicinity now, that some have already crossed 2,000 over PSF. So just remember, it's like as though you're using this PSF to buy back lease, hold for a longer period of time, hold a larger quantum, eventually sell to my future buyers. This would be where I think that available supply and demand will be okay, right? And if you look at buyers' behavior, coming down to it, very important to understand, MRT, to me, the facing won't have too much impact. If you are an investor, MRT facing should be okay because generally speaking, you're paying lesser, but you earn lesser lah, fair ma. If you are own stayer, then yes, buy the one that's nice facing because you're going to stay there for a longer time. In general, also look at the buyer behavior to be that most of my Tengah people, as well as my Jurong West people, if they want to buy a young property, they only got 15. If they only got 15, they will usually start from the closest to MRT station, Tengah Garden and maybe Lucerne Grand. If not, they will start from youngest property, which again, you only got so few options. Right. So for me, if I was to look at FAB in general, is Lucerne Grand, Fab or Float, I will lean towards Fab, but there are a lot of indicators that we need to look at to determine whether Lucerne Grand really can buy or not. And actually, this boils down a lot to pricing. So if you want to really have a strong discussion about Lucerne Grand, if you are a Westie, I can help you take a very, very good look into how the pricing strategy is done by developers on the booking day, because then we can understand how do you enter to make sure it's Fab. Right. If you are a Lucerne Grand buyer, okay, and you say that, oh, I want to buy for transformation, all that, you must also be willing to hold out a bit longer. I honestly feel that Lucerne Grand is going to be a decent project in terms of sell out, will probably sell very well, right? But stacks and facings will be, I think, the crucial reason to how you can profitabilize your property, especially if you are buying into this area. Okay, so really, this one must reach out to me, especially for Lucerne Grand, to really analyze whether can buy or cannot buy, right? Because all this information that I've shared today, I'm only sharing based on what I have researched and what I can research. But in time to come, when developer give us more information, it'll be easier for us to tell whether it's truly flat or flawed. Okay, so without further ado, thanks for watching the video. If you haven't caught my Lentor Garden video, you can actually click the link above. I'm going to link it up, right? And also, if you want to discuss with me anything in the private market or even your own property, when it's a good time to sell, whether you should sell today or not, scan my QR code. Let me run through with you this entire concept based on your property by itself. And also, if you want to look at Lucerne Grand, do contact me because I can definitely show you things that you can buy and things that you cannot buy. Okay, so thank you very much. Once again, my name is Jacob. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Do help me to like, share, subscribe. Okay, and if you have friends or family looking at Lucerne Grand, watch it. Right, I think it will help you a lot. Okay, so see you again in the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.